Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm meadsyreplays. Welcome back to the channel. Now today we are going to have a look at the top 10 most useless tanks in World of Tanks Blitz. Yes, the most useless tanks in the game. Now some of these you may not agree with, some of them you will agree with, but everyone has their own opinion, and this is just my opinion. Now the T95, I've put this right at the end because it's a hit and miss. Like, it's very slow. The armor profile is good when you use it correctly. The gun is okay, but just because it's so slow, it's only good on certain maps. If you get a map like Canal or Middlesbrough and everyone goes up or anything like that, then this tank actually becomes very useless because by the time you get there, your whole team is dead. However, I do like the gun. The gun is very good. The armor profile, if you're kind of angled, then yeah, it does become very strong. And if you're hiding sort of the right hatch, that's what we try and do with the, well, that's what we try and done with the E100 at the start. And at this point, I'm just going to head towards this E100 at an angle, and we do manage to get a bounce. So I'm not too bothered now if I do get shot from this E100. I know I have the E4 coming to support me, which I don't really need his support. But yeah, in my opinion, it is kind of a useless tank. It's just so freaking slow, and if people get behind you, they can HE you. Just because the armor is really, really good, the rear armor is not so good, so they'll be able to HE your ass and a lot of damage, and there's not really too much that you can do about it just because you are so freaking slow. Seems quite easy to ace as well. I mean, 3.8k, and that was a first class, but yeah, that's definitely in the list. Now none of these are really in order except for the last three tanks. The last three tanks, in my opinion, are the worst three tanks, or the most three useless tanks in the game. So the 7 tanks before that are in no sort of particular order. Now next up we have the Persian. Now this one, again, I just think it's useless. I don't think, when I was looking at it, I was sitting there thinking, like, there's no point playing the Persian when you could play the Super Persian. Now the Super Persian is better than the Persian, but the Sheriff is better than the Super Persian. So in my opinion, there is no point even playing the Super Persian or the Persian. The Persian is much weaker for me than the Super Persian. At least the Super Persian has a hull. It has a very strong hull, and the turret is still kind of it's still strong in a way, and it's really troll. However, the Persian doesn't really have that. It is weak. It can get the odd bounce on the turret, but in my opinion, it's useless, and it's just really not a good tank. That leads me on to the next tank, the VK4502. Now this tank is not a bad tank, but it doesn't really perform very well. It's got good DPM, it's got good speed. Wargaming buffed it not so well, quite a while ago now, sorry, and they buffed the front plate of the thing. Even with that buff, I don't think it's really done anything to it. It's very weak. Anyone can penetrate it, and you don't really see people performing well in this tank at all. And it is just one of those tanks where you play it just to grind the tier 9, and you will never ever play this tank again. And like I said, the gun's okay. The gun is not too bad. The DPM is not too bad, but it just struggles to perform out there at all. I mean, you rarely see this tank carrying a game. To be honest, you rarely even see this tank in the battlefield because no one wants to play it because it's just useless. So yeah, the VK is on that list. Next up, we have the T28. Now, I've always said that this tank is one of the worst tanks in the game. Again, it did get buffed not so long ago. I think it got a front plate buff or whatever buff it got. I still think it's shit. I still think the tank is shit. People, I mean, look at that shot. I fully aimed in on that KV3 and it just donked. But the armor profile for me still doesn't work as you want it to work. It's a very slow tank, just like the T95. It's a very, very slow tank. Even though it has the speed boost really does nothing to the tank. The one thing I do like about this tank is that DPM. The reload is actually really, really quick, and it's what, 7 seconds. which is quite quick for a TD. But you can see that this VK has literally no worries whatsoever, no problem whatsoever in penetrating me at all, even when I'm trying to angle. Yes, I am up a little bit now, so I'm not expecting to bounce, but the only thing that got me out of this situation was my DPM, because we leave him on 6 HP. We could shoot HE, but I don't want to risk just splashing and doing nothing. But you know, we actually have a decent game here, but I just think it needs something. You know, it doesn't have the armor profile that it once did. I mean, this used to be a very strong frontal armor. That's before Wargaming got all the other tanks into the game, or it just feels different now than it used to be. Even with the speed boost, I don't think the speed boost does nothing at all. In my opinion, I would just give it a stronger front plate. Just like the T95, like just the T95's front plate is absolutely fine. It's strong, it does the job, and there are still weak points for that. Where this tank, you switch to gold and you could just penetrate it very, very, very easily. And just like the T95, it is actually quite an easy tank to ace. I mean, here we do 3.7k damage, or almost 3.8k damage, and that was actually enough for an ace. But still, in my opinion, it is a useless tank, and it's not worth playing. Next up, we have the Panther M10. Now, again, this was one of my first premium tanks in the game. You used to be able to buy it in the tech tree, quite cheap, and actually at the time it wasn't too bad. The DPM is pretty good, penetration sucked, but yeah, because all these overpowered tanks coming into the game, you never ever see a Panther M10 ever. I did a video not so long ago, or well, maybe a few months ago now, tanks that you never see, and this was one of them, because you just literally never ever see this tank out there now, which makes it quite an easy tank to ace, because no one is playing it. We do get lucky. It still has good DPM, but the penetration still sucks, and in general the armor sucks as well, and it's kind of useless. Next up, again, one of these tanks that is just absolutely shit, and that is the Predator. The Predator, I mean, look at how ugly the tank is, look how tall the tank is. It has an auto loader with the 3 shells, but it has no gun depression whatsoever. It's very, very little. So if a tank comes right in front of you, you're not able to get your gun down. So if a small tank, a low to the ground tank comes in front of you and face hugs you, you will not be able to shoot that tank. So yeah, if an RU-251 or something like that comes and face hugs you, an E25, yeah, there's nothing you can really do about that, because you're not going to be able to get your gun down to take the shot off. You can still perform well in the tank given the team and where they are and their positions and stuff. Like here, I had a pretty decent game, I would say, and I was actually surprised that this gun actually got that shot there. But yeah, again, it's a tank that I hate, and it's definitely a tank that is useless. Next up, this is a bit controversial, and it is the KV2. The KV2 was once one of the most played tanks in the entire game. Yes, every person wanted the KV2, and everyone had the KV2. I think I did a video a few years ago at the top 5 most played tanks, and I think the KV2 was up there at number 1 or number 2 or something like that. Since the introduction of the Smasher, no one really plays it. And not only that, but Wargaming introduced the Smasher, and then they nerfed the KV2. They nerfed the HE. It's just, I mean, you used to be able to one-shot another KV2 frontally. You shoot the turret ring. Now you can't do that. It's stupid what Wargaming done with this tank. They completely nerfed it to the ground, and then they bring the Smasher in, or they bring the Smasher in, and then they nerf this to the ground. Like, I don't really don't understand it, and that has just made this tank absolutely suck. The only way to play this tank now is with the other gun that doesn't do as much damage, but it's got massive or a much more DPM. But yeah, utterly useless at the moment with that KV2, which it kind of sucks to say, but it's the truth. Next up, we're moving down another tier. We're going to tier 5, and it's the Churchill 1. Now, this tank really does suck. In my opinion, it is the worst tier 5. Has no armor, has no gun depression, it has no speed. It literally has nothing going for it, and I don't understand, other than grinding the tank. I really don't understand grinding the tier 6, sorry. I really don't understand why people would ever play this tank, because it really does suck. It is horrible to drive, and it is just utterly useless. That brings me on to the next tank now. Now, this actually sucks. This is one of the worst tanks in the game, the ARL V39. Now, you're going to watch what happens. We are quite low to the ground, but if you look at that massive, massive hatch on top, we get shot there from the Hellcat because he is shooting our hatch, and there is no chance for me to shoot him because I'm just too low to the ground. I can't get my gun up over that. I can't even see over the ridge, and yet he is still shooting that hatch of mine, and that is why this tank absolutely sucks. The gun is pretty good. There is no armor whatsoever on the tank. I mean, if it had some armor, okay, not too bad, but it literally has no armor, and that hatch is bigger than my house. So yeah, one of the most useless tanks in the game. But the number one useless tank in the game, in my opinion, we haven't even got footage of it because I was just in queue for so long, is the T7 car. Yes, the T7 car is the most useless tank in the game. You can see it holds 1,350 ammo, doesn't have APCR, and the penetration absolutely sucks. It cannot pen a single thing. When you come up against tier 3, even something like a BT2 or a BT7, it struggles to penetrate, and that is the same with the light Vic, kind of like the same thing. But yep, the T7 car for me is the most useless tank in the game. Let me know your thoughts, and if you agree. I'm Meadsy. I'll catch you all soon. Bye bye.